Another one in Melbourne. Nice. So welcome everyone. My name is Dévashi. Oh, and you're in Poland. Amazing. My name is Dévashi Shakti, and we're here to explore an intro to deep feminine somatics. Just checking everyone can hear me, Leah? Amazing. Thank you. Yes. So we have women tuning in from different parts of the planet, which is very beautiful. And today, this first part, I'm intending for it to be a fair bit shorter than the others. So it's like today is more of an overview, and then I'll go more in depth tomorrow and the following day. Some women still arriving. There's also some monkeys arriving on my roof right now. I'm living in Bali, Indonesia, and I just heard a jump. Something landed on the roof of my house, and I know that it's a monkey. So some of you might know me from Tigress Yoga, and some of you might be totally brand new to what I share with women. So welcome to this somatic feminine community where we're exploring embodiment from a deep feminine perspective. And so, yeah, just for everyone that's arrived now, I want to say that in the recording, it will just be myself. And so if you're here live, feel free to be on camera if you would like to have more connection, and you won't be showing up on the recording, just so that you know. And the intention today is to hopefully simplify, what does it mean, deep feminine somatics, and to demystify that a little bit, and to invite you to meet me, maybe for the first time, and this unique approach. And while I'm sharing about it, I'd love for you to feel what you're hearing, and not just hear it, think about it up here, but actually feel it in your heart and in your body. And I welcome you to do that in the way that you're ready to, in the way that you intuitively feel called to, and to just help open that up so that what is being heard can be received more from into your body, and not just your thoughts, not just your mind. I want to invite us all to take a second to let your eyes relax away from your screen, and to just be aware of the space in front of you, just around your physical body. Just become aware of, I'm aware of the temperature here in Bali right now. Becoming aware of how you're sitting, how you're feeling right now, maybe. Whatever it is that you notice happening in your own space. And as you're ready to let your eyes close, and simply place awareness on your inner experience. And that might be physical, might be emotional, might be sensation-based. And you might be aware of the feeling of your breath as it's moving through your body. And your thoughts in your mind moving through your space. And as you do that, just being here, tuning to your inner experience, I want to invite a connection of a hand or both hands in contact somewhere on your body, on your skin. somewhere that feels comforting or nurturing. And just letting your body experience that touch, the presence of your hand. And let that help your pelvis to relax, for your tailbone to drop down. Almost like it's an anchor in this moment, drawing attention down towards your seat. And just hanging out there on the base of your body with any awareness or sensations there, where your base is meeting your seat. Just noticing how that feels for you, if it feels grounding, comforting, or not. And then seeing what would happen if you took even more awareness into the feeling of your breath. And with your eyes still closed, know that anything that's shared today has the potential to shift something for you. And so this invitation is for that to happen on a feeling level, on a felt sense level, deeper than just passing thoughts. So right now, I'm just getting acquainted with sensing and feeling. And my invitation to you is not necessarily to keep your eyes closed or anything. You're welcome to reconnect in a few moments with the others here, with myself, but to allow some of your attention to remain more in your inner space rather than letting it all escape through your eyes and into the screen. So I'm going to give you a few moments just to feel where you are now, noticing what you are experiencing, being with yourself. Maybe even having a little stretch. Or a sighing breath out. Whatever helps your physical body to feel like there's more space for you to be here. That there's more space in your body to listen and to feel and to sense. Now, our topic today is very much about being orientated through senses. And deep feminine somatics. I'm going to weave this into the sharing here, and you're welcome to receive it how you would like. We're talking about instinctual body wisdom in deep feminine somatics, and the realm of sensual intelligence, I call it, and how this gives us access as women to levels of inner experience that are normally kind of invisible or hidden, and often remain unexplored until we bring our awareness to them and learn how to work with them. And It's my inner standing and my experience in working with lots of women that what's natural to us biologically as females has always been trying to lead us to embodiment through the lens of our felt sense and our innate female wisdom. And I'm going to explain more about that in a moment. And one of the ways I wanted to start this off today is to actually break down some of these definitions of deep feminine and somatics and deep feminine somatics. And before I do, if you want to engage with the chat, I want to ask you, what is your understanding that you currently have? What do you already know about deep feminine somatics? If you were to say it, if your understanding right now could form into words, what would that be if you were to explain it to someone? Or does it feel totally mysterious and you're really not sure? You might want to take a moment just to even feel what your answer might be. And you're welcome to type it into the chat. And by doing this, even if you're watching the replay, actually, if you were in your own space, no one even needs to hear you. If you were to just say it out loud or even write it down, this is a way of kind of distilling the current understanding that you already have. And then seeing for yourself is what is about to be shared here today, expanding your view. Is it expanding your perspective, your understanding? And there's lots of women here who've been training with me, and so you're cheating a little bit with your answer. But I'm going to go ahead and share some ways of explaining just deep feminine, what I mean when I say that. There's lots of different ways that I could talk about it, but I'm going to start with saying the deep feminine is about being orientated by the organic, natural, and pre-patriarchal world, orientated to what is real and authentic. And in that, how vital life itself is, love, how important love is, the preciousness of humanity. And it's the perspective, the deep feminine is the perspective of the mother goddess, or in other words, a primordial feminine consciousness. And that, of course, can move through any gender. It doesn't belong to any gender. However, it becomes quite specific when it is moving through the female form and female psyche. And as I say these things now, I want to welcome you back into that space of feeling and sensing how it is touching you to hear these words. And I can go on to add to that is that the deep feminine is what lives outside the context of a world obsessed with personal gain and conquering and other colonial pursuits that can and do inhabit us if we allow it, if we're unaware of it. And it tends to do so until we intentionally unravel ourselves from that social and psychological programming. Because when it's just the context that we're living in and it goes unquestioned, we tend to replicate it. And there's a big power of feminine energy within there to create, to birth, And that tends to be the case, that we perpetuate more of it until we learn not to. And the deep feminine is a process of returning ourselves to what is true and natural and eternal and vital. And it can feel like remembering more than learning. And it tends to happen in connection with others, as opposed to isolated, individual only. Is this making sense for those of you that are here live? Yeah. So feel free at any time to just pause and really reference this in your own body, in your own space. And I'm going to move on to a definition of somatics. And firstly, the primary word within that being soma, is a Greek word that relates to the connection of body and soul, and specifically of soul inhabiting the body and the sacredness of that. That's how I would describe soma. And a direct translation from Greek, one of them, is the living body of your wholeness. So it's much more than just working with the physical body, as opposed to just psychological level. It really is deeper than that. And somatics, or somatic therapy, which I can interchange a bit when I describe it, when I talk about it, is a general term referring to this orientation of soma as the basis of therapeutic teachings and processes. And the realm of somatic therapy, officially in the modern therapeutic world, has been happening for close to 40 years or so. So it's still considered quite new in the world of psychology and psychotherapy, where in the past it was more about mind, the psyche, mental patterns, but not necessarily the felt sense and the inner body experience. And I mentioned before the pre-patriarchal world. And I know that that is a loaded term, patriarchy. And so I want to also break down a way of describing it that is where I'm coming from, the context of where I'm coming from. And when there's loaded words like this, I think this is a very great moment to take a pause inside and just check with yourself, what does that evoke for me when I say that word, or when you're hearing that word right now? Because there tends to be the inner experience of it, the outer perceptions of it, and it can all kind of collide at once. So a way of explaining patriarchy in the way that I mean it is a power over position, a domination system that encourages an individualistic mentality of personal gain at any cost. And therefore, within that inherently is a disconnect from the natural world in order to attain identity, fame, money, power, whatever it might be. And although those things are not in themselves wrong and bad, it's the fact that patriarchy externalizes where our sense of self comes from through those outer things or achievements or accomplishments, which leaves people feeling disconnected from themselves and each other and their bodies and from the earth. And it's very much originally coming from a not just male lens, but a disconnected male lens, an unrooted, disconnected from the earth male lens. And of course, as most of the women in this community are already aware of, disconnected or uninitiated women are very much vessels for patriarchy as well. So I want to make that super clear before I use that term any further, that when I say patriarchy, I really do mean this inner dynamic of it, and not just this thing that's about blaming men. It goes far, far deeper than that. And I notice my body just naturally taking a deep breath after having said that. And so I invite everyone to feel that in your own space, just taking a moment to notice how this is sounding and feeling in your own system, in your own beautiful body. And so deep feminine, I've shared some understanding around that. Somatics, I've shared some understanding around that. So when they're brought together, deep feminine somatics, for me, this refers to the natural experiences that we already go through as women and how they are part of our sensory intelligence systems. Where this reference that I'm making now is what takes it out of being just biological functions. Our natural experiences that we already go through as women are not just biological functions of reproductivity, which is how women were seen as useful through a patriarchal lens for their reproductive value. However, our soma, our embodied soul experience as women, actually opens up relational wisdom, mystical experiences. It massively increases the emotional intelligence in herself, in what the space around her and anyone in it. And so there's a different level of intelligence that comes through anyone who is coming from an embodied state, but there's a particular way that it comes through a female body and psyche. And to say something about what deep feminine somatics isn't would be to say that this is not just general somatic therapy teachings, theory, and practices in an all-female environment, because this is actually different content in a different atmosphere, the feeling experience of it all. And the way of learning is different because it emphasizes personal embodiment of the learning as the primary outcome. And more than that, being open to where that would actually lead you to. So that primordial feminine consciousness actually being a source of direction through life, through the world. And that's very different to just taking in education as a skill set to help everyone else with, and having already a predetermined idea of, okay, I can do this service, I offer these skills, and that's it. That's how it's going to be. Whereas if we allow these deep feminine somatic teachings and practices to re-establish you, reorientate you, dismantle unconscious internalized patriarchy, and rebuild this incredible inner foundation of intimacy with your real embodied female energy, and you are receptive and open, and even with the devotional sense of how this primordial feminine consciousness, and I have tingles all over my body right now saying this because it's a very alive intelligence in every single one of us. and I'm feeling the presence of it in my body right now as I speak. It has the power to show us why we're actually each here, what we uniquely, creatively have to share, what we are at a soul level conduits for. And that's something I love a lot about the somatic feminine community and the training experience that I take women through, which I'll mention way at the end on day 3. Because when the same women, like the same group of women, go through the same training and come out offering it in quite different ways, that's a result of the emphasis through the whole process to encourage you to that level of receptivity and surrender that allows you to come from your own embodied, and that maybe is another term I could add to break down and define, but if I say it briefly right now, it's that innate wisdom of when you have been initiated on an embodied level, that it is a very grounded and stable knowing of who you are and what you're here to bring in the way that it's uniquely flowing through you. And every woman is capable of coming to that place. And yes. So being open to where it leads you to is quite a mysterious or magical element in all of this. And I want to give a couple of examples of women that I've worked with before. And I'm thinking of Jane right now, Jane Roberts, who is a highly credentialed academic scientist with a deep passion for working with horses and equestrian therapy. And so through her own process of embodying herself as a woman, she ended up carving out a whole new niche of deep feminine equestrian work, because there's a lot of patriarchy in the horse world that I had no idea about. And so that's just one example of how unique and creative and not the same as everyone else your offering could end up being, when you allow your personal embodiment initiation process to be number one, rather than just relating to this woman approach to somatic psychotherapy as a skill set to learn to help everyone else. There are a lot of different examples that I could share. That was just one I wanted to highlight right now, because you may well be very called to work with women in official somatic therapy sessions in person or online or something like that. And you might want to call yourself a somatic coach or a somatic psychotherapist. But I wanted to give that example now to show how things that someone just would not normally initially think of become possible when we're open to this very mystical embodied learning experience. And I want to add that deep feminine somatics is not just about releasing trauma. It's so much more than that when it is offered in this deep feminine atmosphere. It happens, we do learn how to release trauma. We experience that. But it's like in context, it's also about what is innately underneath that, what is possible when there is more of a restored wholeness in your embodiment. So just releasing trauma is not the only objective when it comes to the deep feminine approach. And as I've said, it's definitely not just a therapeutic skill set to work with to help everyone else. It is that and can be that, but it's more than that. And so the best way of really describing it would be to say that it's an initiation into being an embodied woman. It's who you would be without the limited social programming that has taught you to undervalue your feminine nature. possibly in ways that you didn't even know that you were doing, because that's just the context and the mentality that you're surrounded in, right? So overriding this primordial feminine consciousness is the kind of experience we're all indoctrinated into just by being born on planet Earth, no fault of your own, and wanting to override that to, like, not wanting to, but inadvertently overriding that to participate and get ahead and succeed in a patriarchal world. That just tends to be what happens until we undo that programming. And in the realm of our somatic senses is the incredible experience of embodying full presence with self, and a far heightened and developed empathic attunement. So real relational mastery that can be developed from really being intimate with your somatic senses from the inside out. And also the state of somatic safety. And when that has been met profoundly on an internal personal level, obviously that is easy then to offer and guide someone else into it too. And so I just described embodied presence, empathic attunement, and somatic safety as some of the key outcomes that naturally happen with deep feminine somatics. And all of these developments of our feminine nature are happening in a context that leads to what I call somatic self-leadership. And that is about embodying internal authority. It's literally the inner workings of embodying female power, understanding boundaries in a deep way, understanding internal standards in a deep way, and living from that place of empowerment rather than from trauma identity, or sometimes known as victim consciousness. And all of these things get to happen not just through understanding it, not just through intellectual theory about it, but through things like interoception and proprioception, which is a way of explaining the sensing of your internal, of your experience inside through your feelings and sensations and inner awareness. So it's like an inbuilt self-educating system that becomes access that was already there, but was dormant until it was awakened. And this gives us way more input to understand what's happening inside of us and around us and with other people. It gives us an enormous amount of information. It informs us in ways that just our linear minds cannot. And in that whole process, it helps us give language to subtle inner experiences that create this beautiful fluency of relationship with our inner world. So true intimacy with self. And that 100% affects how we perceive ourselves, like how we see who we think we are, how we relate to ourselves inside when no one's looking, and how we feel towards others, about life and the world, how we interact with the world or not. This is all determined by our inner perception and our inner experience of ourselves. And something that's intentionally emphasized in the deep feminine approach is the experience of co-regulation. That's a therapeutic term that really distills down to meaning attuned connection with each other, with yourself and another, as opposed to the isolation that can happen with a more intellectual approach that tends to be more linear and individualistic. And just in that is an atmosphere that has the power to dissolve internalized patriarchy, which is existing invisibly until it's recognized for what it is. All of us that have gone, say, beyond high school, even in high school, right? But beyond high school into university and other education programs, there is definitely a dominance of intellectual learning, right? And this is not about not valuing that, because there is some theoretical learning in this too. And it's kind of happening right now. But the atmosphere and the content itself has this way of actually dismantling what is keeping you away from embodied intimacy with self. And some ways to know that internalized patriarchy is actually operating. There are many things, but I'm going to name just a few that I know everyone will immediately understand and relate to, like hyper independence, competition. There's a level of healthy competition, but competition as like a regular mindset that creates jealousy and disconnection. This is the form of internalized patriarchy. Also, the mother wound essentially comes from patriarchy. Sisterhood ruptures, lack of feeling somatic safety, all of that is a consequence of patriarchy by no fault of your own. And so deep feminine somatics gives us a way in to relate with ourselves so deeply. And it's a process of reconnecting with our subterranean inner layers underneath regular thought, underneath our trauma adaptation behaviors, underneath the dominant cultural programming that you're coming from. And it gives us a way to actually interact with what's underneath all of that, to listen to it, to appreciate it, to understand it, and create the space internally to allow completion of initial traumas to be released and to be orientated in life from this place of intimacy with self first, which obviously allows for intimacy with others. So it gives us agency to rely on our own felt senses rather than just intellectual linear information alone, or from listening and deferring to the authority of others. And I want to take a pause here to tune in to each of you that happen to be here live right now. Yeah, beautiful. I'm just seeing what's written in the chat. I'm going to read a few things out. And this was in response to a question earlier. Despite exploring this a lot with you, Dévashi, it's still difficult for me to explain it with words, sure. But trying, it's tuning into the feminine body wisdom and bringing back Sophianic coherence. Beautifully said. Sophianic coherence is maybe a little beyond the definitions I intended to bring today, but yeah, that's totally onto it, Emily. And access to the true essence of life and being navigated from that place. Trust in the goodness of life. Access to the organic vitality. No cookie cutter outcomes, true empowerment, beautiful. Yeah. And I'm going to say just a little bit about myself and my background and how did I even come to this? How did I even come to be talking about deep feminine somatics and being a leader in education on this level, inviting women to experiences on this level? And I want to explain this in a way that's different to how I have shared about my journey before. Because what I'm bringing on this really does come from lived experience. It comes from my own somatic gnosis, not from something that was directly learned from anyone or anywhere else. And it's because I'm coming from lived experience. This is literally why I am a founder in female embodiment practice and a founder in women's somatic psychotherapy, right? Because let's go back to the original body of work, which is Tigress or Tigress Yoga. Why was I able to perceive that that there's an unquestioned male approach to yoga? Why was I able to perceive that as not like acceptable to me or desirable to me and to many of us? And just like not enough for us as women who are here to experience the embodiment of our female power as sovereign beings. Because at the time that I brought that through, and there was a process for a while, like I had this powerfully moving through me before I actually started to share it, years before. And those years, that lag time was my internal process of breaking down, relating to like some spiritual authority that comes from male lineage. And when it did actually come through, firstly in private sessions and then in classes and then in groups and teacher trainings, and it just kept going and impacting a global movement of in-depth female embodiment practice that literally didn't exist. The term didn't exist before Tigress, right? So why was I able to perceive something that people were not questioning before that point? Because it's definitely not from having like a business idea. That is so not me. If you've ever met me personally and know me, you know that that's not who I am. But to carve out actual niches that didn't previously exist, this is literally a consequence of where internalized patriarchy had been broken down in me to the extent that it had been at that time. And I want to share with you, there's a few, but one of the main primary ways that that happened. And it was when I was much younger. And it was through my experience of menstruation. And I want to share this example because we all relate to it, right? We're all women, we all bleed. And we all had the experience that we had with that. And I'm going to guess and say most, if not all, of you listening right now probably did not come into that experience in a context of it being sacred and beautiful and powerful, like I didn't also. But I want to explain the inside of that experience a little bit, because it was pivotal in unplugging me, if you like, from this deferring to external authority, to this accepting of a male dominance that I definitely did experience in my family system and what I could see of society. And what happened, and it wasn't the very first time that my blood came through, but it was not long after, it was like this Persephone experience of being pulled into the underworld, pulled into the subterranean layers of existence and having such like a psychedelic, and it happened again and again, not just one time, but the first time that it happened like that, it was like my third eye was like completely uncovered. My pineal gland was massively activated. And the way that I started, because of my blood, and I believe that is because I became embodied at that level where I could kind of interface with the disconnect going on around me in a way that buffered me a little bit, because I wasn't totally in my body to have to feel it all. And when my blood came through and my, presence in my pelvis was like anchoring into the earth, like literally my vibration got to come through and anchor into this earth, into this planet. And that was like a bit of an undoable process once it happened. And I had so much informing me from my internal reality that I just could no longer follow or deny my inner experience over authority figures around me. At the time, I was like 14 years old, right? So being essentially still a child with a lot of disconnect in the adults around me. And like I could feel and see psychically the pain coming off everybody. I was able to literally see inside people's bodies to an extent and not question this vision, this sight that was activated through my blood. I was no longer questioning the contrast of my inner experience and the outer reality. And it just centered me so profoundly in my body, in my womb, in my own felt sense experience, that it really became such a reliable source of information that orientated me through the world in a certain way. And having experiences like that again and again and again, it just completely breaks down that programming to have to conform to this dominant reality where people are very shut down and disconnected from feeling and get to act out without any consequences, right? So being able to perceive the pain, to witness the trauma, and to know very clearly what is true, what is right, what is connected, what is disconnected, is a pretty strong experience for a child mind to go through, right? And so for us as women, when I talk about these natural experiences that we organically already have as women, this is all part of the orientation to having this fluency with our inner somatic reality, of which our blood is just one part of. There's also major other female body initiations, sex, birth, and more. And then just the regular experience of feeling and experiencing the cycles physically, viscerally through us again and again and again, month after month. We're being pulled down to these subterranean levels of existence where we're kind of stripped of this unnatural, not real overlay on our consciousness, right? And we get to interact directly with the very primal level of reality, where this is the journey of woman that I'm talking about. And so my orientation to the somatic work, the somatic therapy work, started a long time before I officially encountered those bodies of work, like somatic experiencing, for example. So we have an orientation to this as women where it helps to just really value the internal embodied female experience that isn't spoken to in regular somatic therapy environments, and allows us to fully integrate these natural initiations we have as women, and the way that our bodies, the way that our vessels are here to bring this feminine intelligence, this primal consciousness of the mother, of real goddess frequency into this realm. There are levels of that that are definitely not ever mentioned in maybe the more traditional or general somatic therapy environment. So this is an example of what everything I just explained then is an example of what I mean when I say this is not just about the regular teachings and practices in a female-only environment. It's way, way, way more than that. And what I love about it, even if you as a woman don't intend to work with people therapeutically, it actually gives you the opportunity to integrate all of your experiences that you've had, including traumatic experiences too, and be able to create that space internally to reconfigure and deeply stabilize in this consciousness of pre-patriarchy, of the deep feminine. And that makes for a very different quality of connection and life. So this is going to wind up very soon, this sharing today. And I want to say that tomorrow will be more on what the deep feminine approach actually opens up for women, what it allows for in your life. And day 3 will be more about the methods that somatic feminine teaches to give women this embodied initiation experience into like really inhabiting your womanhood, whatever expression that ends up being for you, and to actually really feel like a woman in your body, to actually know how to work with this fluency of your intimate connection with yourself in relationship, in sexual intimacy. That's when embodying female power matters the most. You know, in your mothering, if that's part of your journey in your birthing, like this is where it matters the most, as well as any offerings that we create, right? But these pillars of our inner feminine experience are where we get to anchor that very autonomous, sovereign, deep feminine embodiment and come from that experience. So for now, just before we go, for those of you that are here live or those of you that are watching a replay, I want to invite you to once again look away into your own space for a moment. Let your eyes rest away from your screen and come into yourself, just to take a moment to feel and to breathe into the feeling of possibility that initiation into being an embodied woman could bring, even if you feel like you've had a fair bit of that already. What's the feeling of possibility of the more of that for you? And another contemplation that I'll offer, and I invite you to feel into it if it feels right for you. And that is to breathe into and to reflect right now on disconnect from this deeply grounded, intimate connection with your body as a woman, how that disconnected has already impacted your life, what the absence of initiation into being an embodied woman created in your experience. Just taking a moment to presence that. And being with it as much as you're able to right now. And with that, I want to invite this felt sense of appreciation of your own sensual intelligence, primordial feminine consciousness that is in abundance, accessible through your body. Just taking a moment to be with that in the way that you feel it, to breathe into appreciation, deep feminine consciousness through the gateway of your body. And in case you're not already, see what it's like to place a hand in contact somewhere that feels comforting. And if you're willing, for your other hand, if it's not already there, to rest over your womb. And to feel your breath moving under your hands. Inviting attention, presence into these places. And ending right now with so much kindness to your feminine nervous system, everything she's been through. So much appreciation. And then once again, returning awareness to the feeling of your base where it meets your seat. And hanging out there a few moments, grounding, presencing, a sense of anchoring down. I just naturally felt like taking a big sighing breath out. And I invite you to do that if it feels good in your body. So I look forward to sharing more with you tomorrow on this beautiful journey of inhabiting our bodies as women and getting that. Somatic therapy is an incredible contribution to expanding emotional intelligence in all of humanity. And then the very specific ways that it flows through you as a woman and how that gets to be amplified and honored. So we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for your presence. And I look forward to being with you in the next video. Take care, beautiful women. See you soon.